Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Future Leader Sessions. Today, we're going to be talking about mastering performance. I am your host. My name is Elena Kyria, and I'm really excited to have the chance to welcome some amazing panelists today to talk about what is often a really, really difficult part of leadership, and that is around managing performance, having difficult conversations, and setting people up for success. So, before we jump into everything, I am going to just share with you some housekeeping. So, whilst you settle yourselves in, this is going to be a 90-minute session. The beauty of these sessions here are that they are interactive. So please stay with us for the full 90 minutes to get the maximum value from today's session. We are running this as a Zoom and also as a LinkedIn Live. However, we are going to be using Slido to centralize all the interactions. For those of you that have never used Slido before, it's a place where we are going to be running some polls and also where you can see that people have already started to ask questions. You're going to be able to spend time in Slido upvoting and asking the questions that really, really matter to you. In the second half of the session, we are going to be going live to the questions that have been pre-registered here in Slido, and also I'm going to be addressing the questions that have the most votes. So I'll be reminding you throughout the course of the presentation to keep dipping into Slido to make sure that you are having a look at the questions that are live there. If you're having tech issues, please use the Zoom chat for support. If you are joining us on LinkedIn, please look around the event. In the comments section, you should find a link to Zoom. So if you're having any difficulties watching us on LinkedIn, you're welcome to join us as well in the Zoom room. This is going to be recorded and it will be available on Elemed's website alongside many of our earlier episodes of Future Leaders. This is the 13th episode, believe it or not. That means that there are 12 other episodes of value that are waiting for you to watch. All to do with leading teams. So please spend time in there and I'll give you the link to make sure you have access to that as well at the end of the session. We are going to be running this on time and we will not overrun. So the goal is to get as much value as possible for you all through the next 90 minutes. And finally, please keep giving us your feedback. We're having really, really good feedback follow-up from our audience. And this is what is inspiring us regarding the topics that we're planning already for 2026. So please let us know what we're doing well and any ideas you might have for how we can improve this to make sure that we're still doing amazing events for you all into 2026. So this is the QR code. Please take a second and scan this QR code on mobile to open up Slido. If you are more of a desktop person and you don't want to scan your QR code or join on mobile, you'll be finding on the Zoom chat a link that will take you directly to Slido so that you can open it in desktop and have more of a browser view in this way. Remember, we're going to be addressing these questions in the second half of the session. So if you have a burning question, please drop it in Slido. If you don't have a burning question, but you are still wanting to participate, please take a second to have a look at the questions that are coming through and upvote the ones you really like the look of to let me know which ones we should be throwing to our panel first. So first of all, let's just check that Slido is working. My first question for you all is, where are you joining from? So if you are live on Slido, you should be able to see a poll popping up to ask, where are you joining from? So I can see that we've got people, so I'm in London, obviously. We have people in Austria. We've got people in Switzerland, people in Bern in Switzerland. So a very European crowd right now. Okay, Chicago. So we do have the US. Actually, we do have quite a lot of people from Switzerland because it's a big word on the screen. So we've got France. So a lot of France. We've got Toronto. I've never been to Toronto, but it's supposed to be really, really nice. Belgium. Okay, amazing. So we have really a global audience. So thank you for joining us wherever you are in the world, and super excited for you to be here. So let's get started. I want to take a second to welcome our panelists. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that we can bring them all up onto the screen right now to introduce themselves. First of all, I'm going to jump over to Martin. Martin, can you please let us know a few words about you?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Thanks, Elena, and thanks for inviting me. So Martin Geertsema, Vice President at CONMED, responsible for international quality assurance and regulatory registrations. Worked 17 years for Philips and now 6 years for CONMED.
Thanks so much, Martin. Veronique, why don't you go next?
Yes, hello, my name is Veronique Maindron, and I've been working in regulatory affairs for 25 years. And I want to thank you, Elena, for inviting and for organizing all those fantastic events that are allowing us to keep the connection and to share what our experiences with our colleagues all over the world. I've been working 25 years now in the regulatory affair or MedTech space, and now lately on the pharma space. I'm working at Bausch and Lomb, a wonderful company for 2.5 years now, and I am an executive director in charge of international regulatory affairs, more specifically lately LATAM and EMEA.
Thanks so much, Veronique. Vishal, let's go to you next.
Thanks, Elena. So yes, I'm Vishal Thakker. So I'm head of approved body at BSI. Been at BSI actually 10 years this month. So it's been a big, long time, my longest job in the industry. So, I have been in leadership positions for the past 6 years of my career at BSI. Most recently for the past 4 years, heading up the approved body. So a lot of change coming, and also a lot of leadership role across the whole of the approved body and notified body as well.
Thanks very much. Thank you, Vishal. So bringing a different perspective as well from a notified body leadership, really interesting. And Shereen, last but not least, welcome.
Thank you. My name is Shereen Bienz. I am a Senior Regulatory Affairs Manager at Smith & Nephew. I've been in industry for about 17 years, spending the majority of my career at Smith & Nephew, a little over 15 years. I've been in a management role for almost 6 years now, but I've also led projects, so I have experience on what it's like to lead and manage others who don't necessarily directly report to you, which is also its own challenge in itself.
Thank you so much and welcome. So welcome everybody. Thank you all for joining and for dedicating some time to really talk about this. So it's something that I really, really love about Future Leaders, and what I say to our audience is the caliber of the people that come onto this. You will never be able to have one-on-one sessions with these people for 90 minutes, just like that, in one go. But today you are having that. We are going to answer as many of your questions as possible to get real feedback from leaders that are actually doing the job that you are aspiring to do. So please make sure that you're interacting, that you are asking questions, that you're upvoting questions on Slido, and that you're paying attention and writing notes. So without further ado, let's get into it, because this is really an important topic, and that's one of mastering performance. So to get us started, I have an opening question that I really want to put to everybody, and that is around what do you think is the one thing that every leader needs in order to build a high-performing team? I'm going to start with Shereen.
So I think the first thing I need is clear objectives for what my team is going to accomplish. Because if I know what we're going to accomplish, then I know where my team members fit into that plan. I'm in regulatory operations, so we actually are mostly involved with like process improvement and other kinds of operations objectives within regulatory. And it's very important that we have clear direction as to what we need to achieve within a given time frame, whether it's that year or a 3-year plan or something along those lines. And by having that, I can then direct my team better and give them the projects, direct them towards the projects that both meet their abilities and also meet our goals.
Thank you so much. So really that clarity of expectation, really nice. Veronique, what about from your side?
So on my side, I would say I would need 3 things. Number 1 is alignment. Number 2 is purpose. Number 3 is values. In other words, how do we align to the goals of the corporation so we understand what our mission is? The purpose is the most important. What us as regulatory affairs, what is our mission in the company? What is our purpose when we're coming to work, and how does that align with the values of the company? And number 3, the values is really about the how. How do I make sure that not only we are performing, but we are performing as a team, because as a team, we are going much further and we will be much more efficient than we. So it's the sum of all of the individuals. So to me, the what and the how are the most important to align with the values of the company.
Thank you so much, Veronique. Vishal, what about from your perspective?
I think I'm going to look at it from a different perspective. And I think the key thing for me is open line of communication. Because, you know, if you're not communicating well with your team, or the team isn't communicating well with you, you're not going to be able to get them to perform well, and you're not going to be able to work together as well. So to me, that's the key thing, you know, that open line of communication, because you don't want it to be lost in translation, or even, you know, people not being open with you of their problems. Otherwise you can't help solve them as well.
I really like that, and we're going to be digging more into actually how you facilitate that later on in the session. Martin, finally, from your side, what do you think?
Yeah, for me, it is really, so in CONMED, we're using StrengthsFinder from Gallup. And what I like about that is that you're focused on strengths, and you can do that as individuals or as a team. And so basically you use your strengths to overcome your weaknesses, and it's much more fun to work on your strengths rather than to improve your weaknesses, right? And that gives a lot of energy in the team, and that really excels the team.
I really like that. So actually also making sure that you've got a really good understanding of the team, and making sure that they're actually focused on the right activities that align with their strengths. Yeah, really good. So then let's talk about feedback, because feedback is the thing that we've done 13 sessions now of Future Leaders, and it's a question that comes up over and over again in almost every single session, which is sort of, how do you actually go about giving feedback? And there's so many different approaches to this, but I'd love to hear from you, Veronique. What's one piece of advice that you'd actually give to a leader to enable feedback to flow naturally?
I would say if I had one word to say, is listen. Listen more than speak, because listening is the only way people would speak to you. If people feel when they speak up, when they provide feedback or they ask for feedback, because yes, some people are really eager to receive feedback, especially when they are junior, when they don't feel comfortable. This is really the time for them to receive both the constructive feedback and also an encouragement for the future. So to me, the listening piece is the most important. And yes, there is a transactional piece of it, which is, these are your objectives, and this is what matters that you deliver. But there is also, for me, the how you delivered it. Because sometimes especially when you are very junior in big organization, you really feel that you will win if you do something over someone else, for example, or you win against the objectives of someone else. But we're working in a society. We are not working in isolation. No matter if your company or your organization is big or small, we are all working for the same goal as one team. And sometimes you may have a small win, but you will have an enemy for life. So what matters the most is making sure that, number one, you can align objectives with the people you work with, and then you find a way to find a win-win situation for both of you. And I believe that this is the how that enables that. And in my opinion, achieving a high-performing team would be a team that would require feedback proactively. When they require feedback proactively, you know you're going to make a long way with them, that they are here to listen, to improve. But the only way they will come back to you and ask for feedback is if they feel they will not be judged. That's the very important thing, that they're in a safe place, and that the feedback will be honest, that you will not be the loving, caring mom. That's not my job. People have a mom. My mom is to give you a feedback that will help you grow, so you can trust that the moment I will tell you what you did is very good, being very good is not enough. You need to say, you're being very good because those were the expectations. And this is what you delivered, and how you delivered it has enabled this. And next time, to grow even more, this is what you can do. But this was very good. They would trust me, because when it will be not good, I will also be transparent the same way.
I once heard this thing, which is be kind, not nice. I don't know if
Exactly.
any of you have heard that.
Yeah.
But it's really powerful, because I think when it comes to giving feedback, very often you can maybe fall in the trap of like glossing something over to be nice, to like not hurt someone's feelings, and or even to just not give the feedback, to actually ignore, you know, especially if it's something small, where you're kind of like, oh, should I point it out, should I not? But actually it's important to actually be kind in giving the feedback, and actually by giving the feedback you're being kind, because you're actually helping that person to grow. Vishal, you nodded your head, and I know that the flow of communication is like something that's important for you. Have you got any advice around giving feedback?
Yeah, no, and you know, I think Veronique hit the nail on the coffin in terms of listening, but I think to me it's also important to take on feedback from your employees, because you know, if they feel comfortable with you as well to give you feedback, and you take that feedback on board, they'll take on board your feedback because they know you're listening. I think it's a two-way communication thing. But also it's also down to, you know, empowering them to make those mistakes if they need to, and actually correct those mistakes without you as a manager being you know, saying, oh, why did you do this? Or, you know, you have to allow them to make the mistakes and correct them themselves, and let them find the solutions themselves, I think is the key. Otherwise you're not actually helping them progress in their own career, because then they'll just be a yes person and not able to progress, because you want them to be in a position like you are, because you're going to move up as well, so you want them to move up. So I think that's the key, you know, to take on board feedback and empowering them.
I really want to spend some time on this idea of like actually giving feedback, and actually I'd be interested to hear, Martin or Shereen, from you as well, on like, what are your do's and don'ts, or do you have like a script or a framework that you use when it comes to actually delivering the feedback? Because I find that sometimes we spend a lot of time talking about concepts around how to give feedback, but actually does anyone have anything really tangible that our listeners can kind of take away and implement immediately in terms of like making sure that they're doing it in that way as a best practice?
Yeah, so we are talking, of course, about feedback. Just want to stress, but I think Veronique also more or less said it, that there is also positive feedback, and
Yeah.
that's really what I'm trying to be also really name all the positive feedback I can, but it should be also genuine, and so it should be real and not just you're great. So that's something that I really pay attention to. Yeah. So, and if we are talking about feedback where somebody needs to improve, I'm always starting more like out of curiosity, like, hey, you didn't meet this deadline. What's in your way? What's going on? Where can I help? To have that feedback, and you need to be quick in giving the feedback before it escalates. Otherwise, you have a way more difficult conversation. If you do it at the end of the year, there's the performance review. It will be a difficult conversation from two ways. So it's super important to be really fast with your feedback on the spot, actually.
Yeah, I really like, and that's actually something that I've learned as well over the time, that actually it's better, rather than like saving it for like monthly reviews or whatever, to actually address it immediately as soon as you see something. That's been one of my personal learnings. Shereen, have you got anything to add to that? Because I see you nodding furiously.
Yeah, I actually, kind of reflecting back on the positive feedback, like how to provide that. I actually like, this might sound silly, but employing the love languages as sort of a lens for the best ways to give feedback to my employees. Certainly physical touch may be a difficult one in a professional setting, but you can use tone and presence to reflect that. So if I have an employee that responds well to words of affirmation, for example, then that might be the way that I provide that positive feedback to them. But if there's somebody that doesn't like that, and they think of it as something that is almost not as true, I have to understand like what is their best way of receiving that positive feedback. And then also kind of talking about providing not, I wouldn't say call it constructive criticism, but how to improve is understanding like and explain to them what you see their values are, how they provided value, where their contributions lay, and then what can I do to remove barriers for you, or what can we work on to make you even better in this specific area where they're not maybe performing as well. And also definitely not saving that for the end of the year. That should be it's part of my weekly conversations, not just doing status updates on their projects, but understanding like where they have provided that value and then where can we improve as well.
On the love language, let me, because some people might not know exactly what we mean by that, and I vaguely do.
Oh yes, sorry.
Not something that like I really, really understand well. So can you give a little bit more context around how would I know if, I don't know, like someone wants words versus hugs, or I don't know, you know, what's the way to identify that?
Short of doing the test, I honestly just ask them, you know, like what it like motivates you best. I think it's not like how do you receive love? That'd be probably an awkward conversation to have, but you know, what really motivates you? You know, do you like getting like strong, positive, you know, reinforcement through the language, through words? Does that help you stay motivated? Is it something else like being able to provide support on your development, like being more hands-on in your development? That can fall under an acts of service, which is another love language. Quality time, that's spending time like more maybe one-on-one time, depending on if they are more hands-on of an employee, which some are more hands-off. They don't want that, and that might reflect on their quality of time. And then gifts, that also might be a bit difficult in a scenario. I think a lot of people can be motivated by bonuses and that you're limited, but you could use something like learning opportunities or tools within their job that could help motivate them as well. So I think that's really understanding their what keeps them motivated in their role as opposed to just how they receive love. I just like that kind of framework as a guidance for understanding what will motivate my employees positively.
That's really interesting. Really interesting. Vishal?
Yeah, no, I just wanted to add to that. I think so. What I've done in the past is actually just ask the people outright, you know, how do you want me to give you that feedback? Like, do you want me to give it to you straight away as when I find out, or do you want me to give it on a monthly basis or a weekly basis when we're catching up? And that's worked quite well because everyone takes on feedback differently. People are going through different things personally as well, so you know that kind of helps you to assess, okay, how that person would react as well. So just asking up front, I think, is the key.
I really like that. I really like that. Veronique?
Yeah, from my perspective, the one key thing as well is to make sure that the person who receives the feedback understand that everything is with good intention and no judgment, because we're not here to love or not love each other. Even we use a love language. We're here to work together and to achieve. And we're here to grow, to learn, and to raise in the organization, in our career, in our aspirations, and to keep learning and get better. So to me, it's very important to understand that it's not a judgment here. It's really based on facts and feedbacks. And we are trying to understand what could we do differently so it gets better in the future. For example, if you have to deliver a strong feedback. And I also pay a lot of attention on checking that the self-awareness is there, that people have the self-perception that is aligned with the message that was delivered. It happened to me once that I delivered difficult feedback to someone. There were some positive elements and some negative elements. And that person in my team only listened to the positive elements. She did not hear a single word about a 90-minute feedback, which is a very long feedback because it was a hot topic. And after 90 minutes, what she told me is like, oh, I'm so happy that you value so much my performance and that everything is all right and that I'm good. So can I expect to be above expectation at the end of the year?
Wow. And that's also really interesting because I also once learned this thing that some people, they in a conversation, right, some people they hear the first thing and other people they hear the last thing, and so but most people don't hear what's in the middle. And so how you open it and how you close it really matters. And there's different schools of thought. So there's the school of, I'm interested for you all, there's the school of thought of the sandwich method. In the UK it's a something sandwich, but it starts with like start with something good, a development, and end with something good. There are other schools of thought that are more around just sort of like, this is what you did, this is what you need to do to improve next time. Do any of you have any like fallback frameworks that you find work really well for you? Martin, you're kind of moving on your seat. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
I tried to sandwich. I'm really bad in the sandwich method. I learned that when I was young, and how to give you feedback, all the rules. Like, yeah, but yeah. So no, I'm pretty direct. My people know that. But I'm also offering my help, and I think they know that. So I think it was already mentioned, yeah, as well, to ask for feedback to create psychological safety in the organization. So they know they can say everything. They know I can say everything, and yeah, that works. Yeah.
Well, let's talk about asking for feedback as well, because I think that that's an important topic. Sometimes there might be situations where, as leaders, right, we can only improve by also getting the feedback, but sometimes people perhaps are feeling uncomfortable,
Yeah.
or not quite right being able to really truly give that feedback. What is the best way to go around actually asking for feedback, rather than just saying, have you got feedback for me, which is like really generic and really, really open, and I think very difficult for people to actually find something tangible? Do you have specific sentences or words that you use to really get good quality feedback from your teams?
Well, I do it often at the end of the performance review. So
Okay.
at the year end, or we're doing your performance review. I'll also ask, hey, do you have also feedback for me or for the organization? For the rest, also, yeah, in one-on-one conversations, when I have a dinner with an employee, because I'm traveling a lot, so normally I take them out. So more in the informal settings, and also asking for some feedback. So that flows quite naturally.
And Shereen?
So I think to start, your team should have a culture of being able to be open and honest. And if, like in Martin's situation where he is direct with his team, I think if they can expect to be direct with him, then that's the best way. You have to kind of create that culture of open communication. But what I've done is I've asked for, rather than keeping it open, do you have any feedback for me? I'll ask, make it a little more specific, like, hey, during this time when I stepped in, or when we did this together, do you have any feedback on how I could have been more clear on the expectations, or something along those lines? So actually, like, making it a specific question to drive the thought process of, oh, I reflecting on this, I do think about how this could have been a little bit better handled. If I can take that as well and not be defensive about it, or try to immediately respond and be responsive to their feedback, just take it and kind of internalize it and say, okay, how can I grow? Or maybe there was just a misinterpretation. That will allow me to get more specific feedback, as opposed to putting the pressure on them to give general feedback about my performance.
I really like that, to actually be intentional about like what specific thing you're asking for feedback on. Let's talk a little bit then around like performance conversations, because I think they typically happen around this time of the year as well, right? And sometimes they can be seen by leaders as quite transactional, that thing that you have to do, and sometimes as well from employees, like having spoken to loads of people in the industry, sometimes they feel a little bit like, they're quite heavy and it's this looming thing that's coming. So what can you do, or what do you do as leaders to make sure that these conversations, they feel fair, they feel human, and they're not just like transactional? Veronique, I feel like that's a question for you.
Yeah. So on my side, there will always be a piece of it which is transactional, because we all have performance review processes that needs to be accomplished. So why not using this time that anyway we have to spend to really have a real conversation? So that's my perspective. So delivering feedback all around, all along the year is the most important. That should never come as a surprise at the end of the year. In my view, this is really violent to receive a constructive feedback at the very end of the year, when you're just ready to go on holidays and you're just stressed about many things around. You have to close the end of the fiscal year, and then boom, you receive that feedback. I really find it very violent. So I try to avoid that as much as I can, and immediate feedback, especially when it's a difficult feedback, are delivered like immediately, because otherwise it just gets bigger and bigger, and some of our colleagues will just try to not see it and forget about it, and boom, it comes back in December, and then in January they're on sick leave. We don't want that, right? We want people to grow and understand. So there is this transactional piece that I use to open up the discussion, and I try to allocate some time. Some feedbacks are easier than others, and I would take for myself like a minimum 60 minutes for the difficult feedbacks. When the feedback is easier, that can be as quick as 20 minutes, especially if we've had long discussion along the year. Doesn't need to be that much. But when it's difficult, maybe some more time is needed. And also, I just make sure that we start from facts, always. To me, the facts is a way to show that we are not judging a person, and we are looking at the performance of an employee. And you could be the best person in your personal life, which is not in my power, and I should not be even entitled to talk about it. It's not in my power to judge that, right? However, we're here to achieve something together. You have a job description, you have a task to do, you have objectives, you have goals to achieve at the end of the year. So let's look at your goal together, and let's make sure that you understand what I'm telling you, and that you have the same assessment that I do. And then I just make sure to make it more human, that number one, there is no hidden personal situation that I would have missed, because some people are very private and won't share openly. And yes, it can happen that someone has a difficult situation. And yes, as a result, performance can be impacted. So in that case, the question will be, what can we do together to make it, I would say, more sustainable for you in the long run, so you have time to come back to a more normal or more sustainable situation. And in the same time, what can we do to make sure that the team will not suffer from this temporary underperformance? So we need to have that conversation. And when the check is done and you understand the person is not going under any specific personal situation that might have arisen and you didn't know about it, I think it's really, to me, very important to ask for the help, the person who receives the feedback, to build on the feedback themselves, and also to build the elements for future growth later on. How to come over all of the obstacles we've been in, how to improve performance, what they need to be active in their performance improvement, in my view.
I really like that. Thank you. And you mentioned a topic around addressing underperformance, which we're going to come to in just a second. But before we go there, I just want to take a second for everybody listening in to share my screen and share this amazing QR code, which is going to take you to Slido. We're going to go for 15 more minutes talking about some of these like broader themes. And then in about 15 minutes time, we're going to dip into Slido to really ask your very specific questions that you have pre-registered or that might be coming up for you right now. So if you're scanning this QR code, you should start to see in the Q&A section questions coming up. So if you have a question to ask, please drop it in the Q&A section. But if you don't, please upvote and thumbs up the questions that you think would be really interesting to get answered. There's quite a lot of questions here. We might not get through every single one. So please upvote the questions so that we can really prioritize the ones that are the most meaningful for you all. So let's jump back now into our conversation and go now further into talking about addressing underperformance. So here's a scenario. You've inherited a team, you've joined a company, and you're leading a new team. How do you quickly identify performance issues as you're finding your feet and getting up to speed? Martin.
Yeah, so my first nature is to look at the KPIs to see how they're performing, but KPIs are not always telling the truth, right? So I had a manager before who said, red is the new green, meaning that it's better to have a real situation and to have more red KPIs than the green. It's all green and it's window dressing. So I think in the years I learned how to identify underperformance. It's more signals in the team. There's unclear ownership. There's low engagements in meetings. What you see also is a lot of firefighting instead of proactive planning. And for me, most important, and you feel that, right, is the energy level of the people. So if the energy is good, then maybe they're working on maybe the wrong things, and maybe due to poor leadership or guidance. But then at least if the energy is good, you can work with the team, and you can achieve great things.
Really like that. Anyone else got anything to add here?
I would say very often in a team, when you come in, the first thing you will see that one person or maybe two person are much more loaded than others.
Okay.
And you could think, why? Why are they loaded? Because usually they are the ones who will raise their hand when something is not working. And usually they are also more efficient than others, at least in some tasks. And therefore, naturally, all of the work flows to them. And people are very happy to see that. So what does it mean for the others? Maybe the others are not as performant as those ones. Also, something I have noticed is the body language and I would say with the avoidance is usually for me like a number one sign, someone who is avoiding every situation where a little bit of work could happen.
Like what?
Like example, they will skip the meetings with some cross-functional discussion. Why? Because regulatory could be triggered and could get with the task out of the meeting. So they will simply not be there, or they will be sleeping in the back of their chair, completely leaning back and not open their mouth for all of the meeting. Even the regulatory perspective is required here. Why? Because if they were to say something, they might end up with more or something too difficult or something they're not interested in.
Interesting.
So avoidance.
Avoidance is one to watch out for. Vishal, what about you? You got your hand up.
Yeah, no, I was gonna say, I think the key is to actually speak to everyone, speak to the teams that your team is working with, because then you'll get an idea of whether your team as a whole is underperforming or is it individuals. Because if you speak to your team, they will just say, "Oh, everything's fine, everything's fine." So it's actually who your stakeholders are is the key, and then you can address those issues. And I mean, sometimes it is quite good to also speak to the individual team members because they may have insights about their peers as well. But keeping it anonymous, of course, when you are having those discussions is important, because you don't want to let them feel like that you're attacking them or it's on a personal level.
And especially in a function that is like really serving and supporting the organization.
Yeah,
it's also really good when you're new into a role to actually like open that dialogue with your stakeholders and also like hear their feedback, because it's something that we spoke about on an earlier Future Leaders, but it really helps to build that collaboration and that networking externally outside of the function.
Exactly. And also I think it's important sometimes to just start from scratch.
Yeah.
If you're part of a new team, and you want to build the new team, just forget about what's happened in the past and just start from scratch, because you want to build the team how you envisage it as well. So sometimes you just need to forget about what's happened in the past, forget about all those performance issues, and start from scratch.
Let's stay with performance a little bit more now. So let's say we've got a scenario. So you've identified that there's someone on the team and you've been giving them feedback like informally, but actually now you're not seeing enough change. And now you're in a situation where you really need to manage underperformance and address it. So what is your approach to giving the feedback and then managing that person through to some sort of outcome, and what are the outcomes that you're actually considering when you're working through that? So a big topic, but Shereen, I haven't heard from you in a while, so I want to bring you into the conversation.
So I think what I might start with is maybe some of their goals are too big or too broad. I think sometimes company objectives can, especially the ones that get cascaded down, can be quite broad and don't have enough measures built into them. So that would be something I would start with is, did we set out, I'm a data-driven person, and I think in regulatory we tend to be very, we talked about being either transactional or having like these direct conversations. I think that tends to be most of our personalities in this type of field. So, did we first break these things down. And if we have gotten to that point, I would start putting more of the onus on this person to say, okay, what does success look like to you for this objective, to this, and then ask them how they specifically think they are meeting that success point. And if we don't have alignment on that success point, then I think that we then have to discover why we don't have an alignment. So I almost take it as like a problem solving approach. I try to figure out what is my specific problem that we have, or what is the problem that is going on with this employee. Ask ourselves, what are the measures we have available to us to say this, again, keeping it like as a fact-based approach. What are our specific measures? And then going through, okay, now why do we then have this problem? So kind of a DMAIC approach: define, measure, analyze, improve, and control. And if we can come up with the solution to that why, it shows that we've been methodical about thinking about the performance, the problems with the performance, the measures associated with those problems, the whys behind it, almost like a root cause, and then get to that improved point. And sometimes at some point, it's not a right role, it's a wrong role, wrong person, or scenario. And sometimes in those scenarios, it's better for a person to exit the team. And I, had a scenario where actually it was a scenario where the employee came from another group and we fit them much better. So they had exited. There was a misalignment on performance. But what they liked working on didn't fit with that team, and they thrived more under my team. But even then, they found something better that suited their values, their motivations, and moved on to that. And I couldn't be happier for them because I coached them to get to that point. And that's sometimes also something we have to recognize as leaders, where we can't fix everything. There has to be a motivation on the other side to want to fix and be better as well. So,
Martin.
Yeah. So, like I said, start with curiosity. So why are you not achieving what's going on? Try to have always an open conversation, so that you give the person the feeling that he or she can improve. I had a case a while ago where also a manager was not performing, and we made also a personal improvement plan. So it's important to also identify the root cause why that person is not improving. And what helped me as well in this case, because he had some leadership issues, he also it was for him difficult to address issues in his own team. And I connected him with one of my colleagues to coach him, actually. So that was also really helpful. What is also important, when you're seeing improvements happening, that you're really addressing that, to give feedback about improvements that person is making when he turns around.
That comes back to your positive praise approach and focusing on like the good as well, and positively reinforcing that. But Veronique, what about, let's say you're managing underperformance, you've got somebody on an improvement plan, you're seeing some improvement, but you are not seeing improvement to the level where it still needs to be. So they're doing some things that are good and they're moving forwards, but it's not quite at the level that that your expectation or that the organization is expecting of them. What happens in that scenario? Have you ever lived that?
Yes, I have. So in that scenario, the first thing I think is to say it. Don't leave it on ice. It's time to say it. To me, a performance improvement plan should be short. Okay. It cannot be like a 12-month performance improvement plan. That's way too long. I would say 3 months, 4 months. Don't extend the pain if it doesn't work. That would be my personal way of dealing with that, because you will see very fast if there is a change in attitude, in motivation, and if what has been agreed on for the improvement plan is actually being implemented. And that should be followed up very closely, even weekly. That could be followed up by the direct manager of the person or by myself. It's one of my direct report, but I would sit weekly. with that person and make sure that what was agreed on is being executed as we said. So immediately you will see if there is a derailment. And if the improvement is not significant or is not to the level, it should be pointed out immediately and not hope that it will improve by magic in the future, because it won't. And maybe it's time to think about, like, is this another career that you want? Is this role fit for you? And if not, can I help you make the step to somewhere where you will be happier? But the strong decision has to be made. I mean, we shouldn't shy away from them. It's just going to extend the pain.
Yeah. And actually, it's really interesting because sometimes it's like a painful 10-minute discussion versus months of pain on both sides. And oftentimes I do see scenarios in which, to avoid a difficult 10-minute discussion, the choice is made to prolong months of pain, when perhaps both sides have the feeling that it's perhaps not going to work out. So you're 100% right in the sense of, like, sometimes you do just need to go and be in that uncomfortable situation.
Exactly. Don't shy away.
Forwards. Yeah, we've got discussion here. So Vishal.
No, I was just going to say, sometimes it's just important to just rip off the band-aid, as we say, right? Just be upfront about it, because, if you keep skirting around the idea, people aren't going to improve. They're just going to continue that bad performance. But I also, when we talk about performance improvement plans and things like that, I think it's very important to set those goals which are achievable. Because I think sometimes some managers tend to set goals which no one's ever going to achieve, like especially in the way that they are performing. So you need to be quite open and honest about how you're actually getting to those goals, and setting them, because otherwise it's not going to work, and there's no point prolonging the inevitable.
Yeah, really valid point. Thank you for that. And Shereen.
So I think also something to keep in mind as people leaders when you're having these difficult conversations is, if no action is taken place, the rest of your team sees this, right? They may be hurting as a result of a performance from one person as well. And if they don't also see action, then that could be something that reflects on the rest of the team, motivations, energy, anything like that. So that's something to keep in mind. Is it may be an uncomfortable scenario for you, but it's probably creating pain across your team as well, if you have somebody that's underperforming and they're having to pick up the load. So, you're the leader of not just that one person, usually an entire team. And that's important to keep in mind when you're having these conversations. And then piggybacking off a little bit off of Veronique and Vishal, I like that 12-week kind of year approach, where instead of having a goal or goals for an entire year, you shorten your year to 12 weeks and you say, this is what you have to achieve in the next 12 weeks. And you do have to make it something that is achievable and not a stretch goal, right? Something that can be done by that person, or should be done by that person in that role, maybe as opposed to like what their actions are reflecting today. Making it, again, specific, measurable, and then having the regular touch points so you can provide the course corrections, because you have that, then they'll know if they're staying on track or not. And I think it should be clear to everybody, at the end of the 12 weeks, if they've achieved what they set out to do or if they hadn't.
Really nice. Thank you. And you make such a valid point as well, which is everybody's watching, and not taking action is also sending a message, and especially if you're leading leaders, right? You're kind of setting the standard of what you are expecting of your leaders towards their team as well. So that's a really valid point. Veronique?
There's something I wanted to add here, because very often we see low performance on the technical side of regulatory, on the deliverable, on the timelines, on what can be measurable. But it happens when you're leading leaders, very often what we have as well is a underperformance on the leadership skills, on the how things are being driven, how people are being managed. And that's a lot more difficult actually to put forward, and how to not seem to be unfair in judging some leadership skills, for example. So this is where what I find the most difficult, and the way I have found around is to request the more feedback I can get from stakeholders around who are not directly interested in the relationship with that person, who's not emotionally invested, who is not a manager or analyzing the stakeholders, 360 feedback, above, below, on the side, from everywhere. And this is the facts, the foundation for the facts that we will observe. And also very often when people see that what they do is perceived by others in a way they sometimes would have never imagined. That is also a shock, like an electroshock for some of them, like they would have never realized. And it's the most difficult is to have a change in the behaviors. Changing, I believe, the technical qualities is much easier to impact, but changing a behavior can take a life. And the first step to make that change is to realize that there is something that needs to be improved.
Yeah, really valid point. Thank you for that. I want to ask one question around setting goals before we go now into the Q&A. And so I'm going to ask the question, what is the most effective goal setting method that you've used that you could recommend to our leaders to implement with their teams? Martin, I haven't heard from you in a while. I'm going to throw that to you.
Yeah, it's pretty easy. They set their own goals.
Okay.
Yeah, then you get commitment, right? No, but my team, I share my strategy pretty often with my team, so they know in which direction we are going. They know what the job is. They know what their area of expertise is. So when we are, and I think that's also something that is facilitated by Workday, the HR tool that we are using. But so they first need to set their own goals. They need to write their own goals, and then you have a discussion as a manager, and you fine tune it, and you come together. But they do the first move, and then you get a lot of buy-in from the employees to stick to the goals.
Yeah, really simple, but I like it. Very good.
Yeah.
Anyone else got anything they can share?
Yeah, usually I receive corporate goals and I translate them into my own scope. And then I would share my own goals to my team and say, hi, how do you translate those goals that are reflecting our team's goal into your day-to-day work? And then you can set up your goal based on that.
Yeah, so it's also kind of filtering it down and having people kind of take ownership in alignment with like the broader goals of the organization. What about timeframes associated to those goals? What have you found works well in terms of like how far ahead should you be looking in terms of planning out those goals? I'll throw that to anyone. Vishal?
Yeah, no, I think usually, you know, a year we set it out for a year.
Okay.
But what's important is having those touch points throughout the year, like during a mid-year review, for example, or even quarterly, to see how they're getting along with those goals, because then you can tweak those goals accordingly. But I tend to agree with what Martin said. You know, let your employees set their own goals based on your strategy. That's very important to empower them, and even asking them, okay, do you think this is achievable in this time frame? And then taking their views on board when agreeing with a timeline. That's very important, because to me, I would say, okay, yeah, I can do this in 2 months, but to someone else, it would take longer. You know, so you have to take that on board. Not every individual is the same.
And it's that iterative conversation.
Exactly.
Create that alignment. Very good, guys. Thank you all so much for your feedback and for this nice flowing conversation in the first part of this session. It's now time to go into the live Q&A. I'm going to give you a second to grab a glass of water whilst I explain how the next part of this is going to work. So to everybody who is watching us on LinkedIn and watching into the session, please scan this QR code. This QR code is going to take you to our Slido. On Slido, you're going to see that there's a Q&A section. So this is the space where you can ask questions on anything to do with mastering performance. Any follow-up that you have on the questions that we've already asked so far, any clarification that you want, you can put that here. If you don't have a burning question that you want to ask, please still have a scroll through and upvote. So give a thumbs up to the questions you really like the look of, so that we can start by addressing the most popular questions first. So the way that this is going to roll is I am going to read out the question, and then it's to whoever in the panel wants to answer it to jump forwards. If nobody wants to answer it, I will pick someone, and you will be in the hot seat. So without further ado, let's jump into it. I'm going to just stop sharing my screen right now. So the first question I have: how do you balance being supportive with giving clear corrective feedback when goals aren't being met? So the question will also come probably in the chat box here as well to help you to read it, but I'll read it one more time. How do you balance being supportive with giving clear corrective feedback when goals aren't being met? Who can answer that? Martin?
Yeah, no, it's a very good question, because I think that's your main role as a manager, right? So your people have their goals, and you as a manager needs to remove the barriers if they cannot achieve their goal. And so, yeah, what's the balance? So what I do, so I manage high level, but if a person is having an issue with meeting the goal, I go deep, I go in, and the good balance that you need to have as a manager is to go out again in time, and to go to the higher management level. So yeah, that's basically how I do it.
Mm-hmm.
I think,
Anyone else got anything to add, Vishal?
yeah, I would add to that. I think it's key to be honest and
Okay.
and upfront with the feedback when they aren't being met, but also asking them, okay, how could you do better? You know, putting a spin on it so they don't feel like that you're attacking them, that then they can reflect on it as well. I think that's quite important. So you can give that balanced approach.
Just to kind of bounce with that, what happens in a situation where you're asking for that person to give feedback or to like reflect on that, but they're not giving you ideas for, okay, they're just kind of telling you, okay, this is why I can't. They're not necessarily, you're saying, okay, how do you think you can move that forward? They don't actually have anything to bring to that conversation.
I think sometimes it's important to give your viewpoint on how you may deal with that situation and say, what do you think? Do you think this could work? So trying to plant that seed in their head, like giving them pointers is the key. But also, taking on board what they're saying and not disregarding it completely.
Yeah, good point. Good point. Let's go to the next question then. So the next question we have is, what early signs do you look for that suggest someone might be slipping on performance? So we spoke a little bit about at team level, but is there anything kind of early signs at an individual level that you look for? Veronique?
So to me, that will be excuses. Whenever someone is starting excusing for not doing this, not meeting this, not being on time, when the number of excuses is constantly increasing and there is no perception of I could have done something different myself, it's always the fault of external events or external stakeholders. Then I'm thinking, okay, there is a misalignment between the performance that we are expecting from the goals and what's being achieved right now. So to me, that's a clear early sign. Avoidance and excuses are usually a good sign something is happening.
That's a great remark.
Yeah.
Honestly, you nailed it.
I really agree. I want to play devil's advocate. For some people, it might be a reason, not an excuse. So what's the difference between an excuse and a reason? And also, let's say you're kind of going, okay, I'm hearing excuses, right?
Okay.
How do you then address that with them in terms of like, actually, this is actually sounding like
the difference between a reason and an excuse is what you do with the external event yourself as a person. Okay, a reason is like a stakeholder did not deliver what they should have delivered on time. Okay, what did I do when that happened? Did I raise my flag? Did I escalate to my manager? Did I push? Did I try to get it from somewhere else? This is a good reason. Okay, that person did not deliver what was delivered on time. I didn't do anything. I did not even notice, maybe because I was not following up correctly. I let the timeline slip because I didn't want to take the lead on that topic. I just felt, oh no, that's not my topic. That should be done by someone else. So I just sat in my seat. This is an excuse. What did you do about the event?
Yes, very good. I like that. Anyone else, Martin?
Yeah, well, I know I'm working with leaders, right? The people that are reported to me, and yeah, there should be no excuses. I mean, if you are responsible for a regulatory department, quality department, you need to do it. And if somebody is not doing their job, you find a way how to do it, or you do it yourself, or so. Yeah, it should be done.
Yeah.
I think the other thing is, looking at the personal on a personal level, are they not like they usually are? Are they being more quieter in team meetings, not attending, those sort of things? I think that's a key thing to look out for as well. Because then that can make you think, okay, this person is kind of slipping in how they usually are, so their performance is potentially not being met.
Yeah. I would say complaints from stakeholders as well. Usually someone notices before you do, very often, and you get to know it the hard way. And people complain, okay, one complaint, two complaints, but then you have a problem you need to address because maybe it's not true and it's a perception. So how can we reverse that perception? Or maybe it's true and that needs to be addressed.
So moving to the next question. So how do you manage your team's performance when your own superior or your own company leadership change direction, objectives, or move the goalpost? Shereen's laughing.
I feel like change is inevitable, and I laugh because we've seen, being with the same company for over 15 years, I've seen a lot of change. And some for the better, some maybe not for the better. In my personal opinion, I won't comment on anything recent or anything, but I would say that what you need to do as the leader is first assess how that leadership change or the strategy change for your company reflects upon your own strategy first before you can communicate that down. You need to fully understand that change for yourself as a performer before you can communicate the performance differences down to your team. If you don't understand that, then you may just be parroting something that and wouldn't be a human conversation with your own team. I'd say that's probably the first thing that would drive that. And as much as possible, I would also say try to be a part of that change. If within limitations, right? Try to make sure that you are a part or a contributing factor in that change as the leader so that you can have an impact on the direction it goes. Some things may be decided without your input. I may not be in a complete position to do that, but at your level within your organization, if you can be a part of that change, then do that.
Martin?
Yeah, so can you repeat the question? I'm not sure.
So how do you manage your team if you've set some objectives, you've set your strategy, but then your leadership changes the goalposts?
Yeah, well, yeah, that happens a lot. Yeah, so there's another strategy, there's another product, there's another so you just amend the objectives during the year. So indeed, like Vishal said, also we are setting our objectives for the full year. But yeah, like every plan, it's never stays the same. So you're just changing your objectives. Be fair about it.
Yeah, exactly. Because it's as Shereen said, change is just inevitable. And I think especially with companies with medical device companies or more corporate organizations, they tend to plan really quite far in advance. If you look at tech organizations, it tends to be a little bit more agile and a little bit more like shorter sprints. And so sometimes you're setting goals for the year, but actually halfway through the year, you're realizing actually like they're not achievable, they're not priorities. So you need to be able to bake in that flexibility into your strategy, but also the team strategy, and be able to pivot, because there's no point like shooting for something that no longer is a priority. So that's a really interesting question. Let's move on though. What's one thing that you wish more leaders understood about raising performance across a team? So these are all coming in the chat as well, in the little chat. So if you have a look, you should see the question written out in the chat. What's one thing you wish more leaders understood about raising performance across a team?
I think I have something I could.
Okay, everyone's got something. So Shereen, let's go with you first.
So I could probably be pretty short and sweet on this. With performance, I think people often look for like, what is the next level I'm going to move towards? Because improved performance can typically lead to what that next level in their career would be. If they don't have a clear roadmap of what that next level, what it takes to reach that next level, then they won't know what performance they actually need to meet. So we talk about goals and objectives, and yes, that's like kind of set on an annual basis, but you also have to consider as a leader more future than just that next year or what that next project is. Their performance should be reflected in the role that they are working in, and also the role that they want to achieve next. If they want to be a manager, their performance should be reflective of being able to potentially manage those that don't report to them. If they want to have more autonomy in the kind of work that they do, they need to kind of demonstrate that, and their objectives should reflect that change as well. So I think it should also be clear that sometimes those objectives may be a little bit higher than that level of the role, but that's because, and then you go and make it clear, you're coaching them for that next role as well. So I think if, as a leader, you need to think about not just that annual objective, but the future of your team and their development as well. And that will hopefully enhance their performance because they have a longer term view of what they're going to achieve.
I really like that. Martin?
Yeah, so I think I have a really high performing team, to be honest. So, so now just for me as an example, how I build that. So I'm managing the country leads, quality and regulatory country leads. And what I did with my team is everybody is responsible for a country, like France, like Spain, but they also have a functional responsibility, like leading the document control or leading clinical evaluations. So, and that makes a team very strong because they're depending on each other. And they're also seeking help to each other. So, and that makes a really strong team. So that's my way.
Very, very interesting. So actually building that into the architecture of like how you shape the roles.
Yeah, exactly.
One question that popped into my head is a little bit off a tangent, but I think it's pertinent because it does come up and people ask me this. When we talk about next step, should people be performing at the next level in order to be promoted to the next step, or should they be promoted into the next step and then understand that there is a gap that they then need to fill up? Is a question that people tend to ask, and I'm interested in just generally your thoughts on how you all see this.
I would agree with the latter. I think the reason being, right, if you want someone to actually make themselves better when they get into a new role, and because if they're already fulfilling that role, what's the point of them going into that role? You know, it's just a title change, but they need to make that role themselves. So I think if they have that gap, they can build on that gap, because then they're just going to get bored and say, okay, when's the next step? So you want that person to stay into that next role for a good few years and achieve that role and build up on that role and build up on their experience. If they're already doing that, that means that you need to look at your team and how you've structured it, because that means that the goals that you've set for that role aren't correct, or that role isn't on the correct level that they're doing it currently.
Interesting. Does anyone have a different perspective?
Well, actually, I'm on your side as well, Vishal. I do believe that there are two things that we should separate, which are performance and potential. Because you could have a super high performer in your team, but that person, for many reasons, may not be a potential for a next level in the managerial skills, for example, or maybe that person doesn't want to move to the next level. So it's also a combination of what you can do in the next step, and then you will learn. There will be a fast learning curve. Versus performing your actual job doesn't mean that you are ready to move to the next one. I don't believe that, because the next one may need some different skills.
Yeah.
So I would trust more stretch assignments, for example, to help you perform in new skills. And also there is something that most of the people in organization forget. Is like, it's not about like, maybe I'm ready to make the next move. Maybe I'm an excellent performer, but maybe there's no opportunity right now.
Yeah.
And that's a combination of the three that makes it happen.
And I mean, to add to you, what you just said, I think it's important to also, not everyone is going to be a manager or doesn't have the skills to be a manager. Some people are fine with the role that they're currently doing, but they want to take the next step in the current role. So for us as managers, I think it's important to understand that not everyone in your team is going to make the next step, but how do you stretch the current role to mold it for them as well, so they're not bored and it is something different.
Interesting. Martin.
But the promotion is not really become a manager, right? I mean, you can also be promoted as an individual contributor. So it's an interesting question. So I think if somebody gets additional responsibility, I think if he goes in that role, he should get a promotion. On the other way, and that's also a bit of my own experience, if a higher performer is eager to do extra things without immediately asking for promotion or extra money, then I think he's also granted the promotion. So what I don't like is that people, if you ask people for, hey, can you do this extra activity, then immediately saying, okay, but that's not in my job description, so what's in for me? So I don't personally like that behavior. So I like when people are taking extra things, and I also have an eye for that to reward that.
Yeah, really interesting. Yeah, I've experienced similar feedback, like the different schools of thought around this, but typically it's this thing of like, if you really want to progress in your career, like take the stretch assignment or take the projects that nobody else wants to touch because they're so messy, and that's where you can really create visibility and like start to build a new skill set that then will get you to that next step. And oftentimes when I see people being promoted, it is because they have done something a little bit extra outside of their job description. It makes them really stand out against the other candidates, that they might be being considered against. And so typically I see leaders wanting a little bit more of somebody to already be doing a bit of the thing that they would then be promoted into doing without having the immediate title straight away. So yeah, it was interesting to hear your thoughts, but we digress. So let's go back to the question. So next, so we've addressed that. There's one that we've already looked at. So I'm going to go to the next one. Have you got any examples or ideas on how to support a team member who is going through mental health challenges or family troubles privately? So we touched high level on this earlier on, where like, okay, performance might be being affected, but that's because somebody's dealing with a personal, like challenging situation. How do you actually handle that?
Okay, I can jump on that one, because I would say, unfortunately, that happens more often than we think. Whether it's shared openly by, or whether it's not shared, but everyone has at some point in their life some personal challenges. For some people, work will remain the safe space for them, the place where they can forget about everything that is not going right in their life. And in that case, to me, it's absolutely right to say, okay, we will support you, but we maybe understand that you may not be ready to be here 100% of the time. So is it that you need temporarily to have like a 50% or 80% part-time, for example? Or is it that you cannot invest yourself the extra mile and you agree on leaving some of the hot topic and the hot projects to other colleagues because you understand that you cannot, you cannot take the lead. It's too difficult on the personal side? Or is it that you need time for yourself and you can have a sick leave? We can look at any kind of legal possibilities to get you some time outside of the team. And that is all right as well. Everyone, to me, deserves the right to be respected in those moments. When it becomes difficult is when the leave is extending and when the people also cannot get out of the situation. And I believe that we need to have the discussion with HR at this point, because it's not necessarily only managerial discussion. It's, I would say, employee well-being is also potentially impacting the well-being of others. And if more action needs to be taken, I would definitely go to HR for that. Yeah.
I think it's also important, to not be judgmental about it. I think that's the key, and put yourselves in their shoes. That if you were in that situation, how would you want to be managed? But also trying to direct the people to things that could support them or help them, not just within the organization, but outside the organization, to make it a bit more personable, and asking them, okay, how can I support you? So putting the question on them, what do you want me to do to support you, rather than you coming up with your own ideas, because everyone is different, right? Some people might want that one-on-one interaction with you more closely, like having catch-ups every week, or someone might be just like, just leave me alone for a couple of weeks, so try and ask them what they want to do to support.
Thank you. Let's go to the next question. So what do you think is the best relationship type you need to have with your team? This is an interesting question. I've seen managers who have more of like a friend type relationship with their team. So this is obviously going to come down to personal style, right? But essentially, like, how are you building that relationship with people in your organization? Is it more feeling like on a friend level? Obviously, there you are building like really good loyalty, but then also like, how do you manage that boundary of, okay, I'm actually also your leader and there is accountability here? Martin.
Yeah. So I think what makes you a great leader, and that you build trust around the team. And I think you do that by expressing a genuine interest in the professional life, but also the personal life. And so I think you can be personal. How are your kids, and so did you do something fun in the weekend? I'm trying also to start my one-on-ones with also, hey, how was your weekend? How was your week? How was your evening? But yeah, not necessarily to be friends. Sometimes that happens. So if you have a match, but I'm not going out of that way. But I think most important is that you build a level of trust with your people.
I really like this next question, so I really want to get to it. What are your top three? Okay, so it doesn't need to be top three, it can be one question, right? But what are your top three inspiring questions that you would ask your team to help them unlock their potential? What are your top three inspiring questions that you would ask your team to help them unlock their potential?
I would say my top one question is, if money was not an issue, what would you do?
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I had something similar to that. And it didn't come up like the money, but it was more of like, if you weren't doing like this specific job, what other job in the entire world would you have? And I like that because it's more about, like the career path they would take, because then you can kind of learn a little bit about what motivates them.
Yeah.
And apply that to potentially this job if it's possible. It may not always be possible, but if you learn that if they could do anything in the world, they'd be volunteering in some organization or something like that, then you can at least use that to apply to like what they could be doing in this job if it's like helping people or something along those lines.
I really like that. Anyone else?
Yeah, actually, I'm asking that during an interview. My favorite question during an interview is, which part of your job makes you really enthusiastic, and which part of your job is really a drain? So you can get a bit of a feeling, okay, which direction is do they want to go?
I really like that.
I think I kind of use Martin's approach of asking, what drains you about this job and how would you change it if I gave you endless amount of money?
There's a really interesting tool. It's called Working Genius. It's something that we do here at Elemed, and it's really around identifying people's. So it's not around personality. It's more around energy management for specific tasks, and it's quite powerful because you do find that there are certain people that are the people that love to finish things, whereas other people, they find it really, really draining to finish things. And so it's like, do you have your finisher people on the projects finishing things, or do you have them doing really creative tasks where creativity is the thing that for them is super draining? And so it's a really interesting like tool and exercise to actually put your team through, and just to make sure that you're actually aligning responsibilities and tasks in you similar to what Martin's saying. You want your people to be doing the things that give them energy, that they find effortless, that really gives them like purpose. Everyone has parts of their job that they don't like, and that is draining, but you really want to avoid situations where your people are spending the majority of their time in those really draining heavy tasks, because that's going to then lead to a retention issue for you longer term. So okay, another question, let's have a look. I'm just having a scroll to see what one I really like here now. Where do you see AI helping leaders spot performance issues early in a way that still feels human and supportive? Is anyone using any AI okay, Martin, talk to us about that.
Yeah. Where do you see AI to support your people?
So where do you see AI helping leaders spot performance issues early in a way that feels human?
Yeah, I'm not using AI that way. That's
you're using it in
your
processes and workflow.
I think potentially with AI, what can be done is like to look at the KPIs and performance in a more analytical way.
Yeah.
And then the outliers, whether good or bad, will stand out more easily.
Yeah, I think it also can be used to predict for the future. If someone's on a trend of not performing well or performing well, I think maybe it could be used to trend that, but I've never used it for spotting performance issues. I don't know whether you can from a.
I'm sure if I like it.
Yeah, I don't know if we'd be allowed to.
I think there's definitely certain functions where it lends itself really well, where you can have sort of like these leading and lagging indicators with nice dashboards and stuff like that. But regulatory perhaps isn't necessarily one of those functions where it's not so metrics. It's
black and white.
Yeah, it's more outcome, more grey, right? There's one question on here that I'd love to close with you all, which is, what's a lesson you learned about handling performance conversations the hard way, and how has it shaped your approach? So what's your biggest lesson learned about handling performance conversations the hard way?
I think I was early in my career, and one of the lessons I learned is like, don't apologize for what you have to say, and don't feel guilty because it will hurt. Silence hurts even more.
Yeah.
You're here for a reason, just do it.
Yeah.
I agree with Veronique. It's important to not be too emotional.
Yes.
I think that's the key, because especially when I started my career as a leader, because you're new in the leadership role, you'll end up being emotional, but you have to be strong. And like I said before, rip off that band-aid, don't skirt around it.
Shereen?
I would kind of, going off that, it's don't get defensive in that hard conversation if they are getting defensive back at you. You don't want to turn it into an argument. If that's probably one of the hardest things to do if you're new and you have emotion, especially in your voice or something along those lines, to not project it. That can be a very difficult thing to try to do. But if you can practice some of those conversations as well, rather than going into it completely blind or without. I'm not saying you need a script, but at a minimum, practice the conversation before you have it.
That's really good advice, actually. Actually, like being prepared for these difficult conversations is probably a big piece of what makes them successful and what makes them a little bit easier. Martin?
Yeah, I think we discussed it before also in my younger years to give a bad feedback performance review, and it came totally as a surprise. And then yeah, you have a lot to explain then. So it's really I can't stress it enough. It's really important to give feedback right away and not to wait.
And I would say from my side, like a learning that I've had has been not to change the plan midway because you feel bad, right? So like if you make a decision, you're making a logical decision based off of certain data, and you know that that is the right decision. When you're in the conversation and it feels difficult, do not do a 360, give more flexibility, change your mind because it feels uncomfortable, but know that the decision that you have made is the right decision, and to keep following through with that even though it is uncomfortable. That's been an important one as well for me.
I think the most difficult for the person receiving a difficult feedback, if they perceive that with your body language, or they perceive that you feel sorry. I think it's awful. It's almost pity if you do that. So by respect, out of respect, I think it's really important to park emotion on the side, because we are here to work together. We're not here to love each other, right?
Yeah.
We're here to achieve.
Yeah. Be kind, not nice.
Yep.
And we may find friends and we may find love, but that's not the purpose.
So this has been a really interesting session, and I want to thank you all for sharing your real world experiences to do with mastering performance, which is actually one of the most difficult topics as a leader we can address. So I want to give you a round of applause. Thank you for your participation and for your insights. Now you're all out of the hot seat. I'm going to take a second just to wrap up, and I'm going to do that by sharing my screen, because I want to hear from the audience. I'd love to know. So if you go into your Slido, you should start to see a question popping up. I would love to know your biggest learning. What has been your biggest takeaway from today's session? What have you learned from listening for the last 90 minutes from our leaders, and what are you going to implement in the next 60 days in your role? Let's see what people have to say. I'm giving it a second to see what's coming through. Love language. Okay. Don't be scared of giving feedback. I think that's something that's come through really, really strongly from everyone, right? Is like approach that, like plan what you're going to say and then approach it head on, and then just get on with it and do it. So thank you all so much. Let's move on. Will you be attending the next session? Yes or no? I'm going to give you more details on the next session for future leaders in a second. I'd like to know what your feedback is. So far, I can only see yes on the screen. Another yes on the screen. It's just yes on the screen. So we've done good work here today, guys. We've got people that are keen to continue with future leaders. A couple of things at Elemed that we've been working on that I really would love to share with everybody. So there's two things. AI literacy is something that is coming up again and again and again in conversations that I'm having. We have developed an AI literacy test. You can fill it out, it's free, it will give you a score, and also you can download a report that will tell you where you're benchmarking and action and improvement points. So please do take a second. If you're interested in just understanding where you're at with AI, please scan that and have a look at that report. And then the other thing that I'd love to share with you all, because we're coming to the end of the year, people thinking about their careers, people also getting really active on LinkedIn, which is really good to see, because you know that I all love LinkedIn. We've built a LinkedIn profile optimization cheat sheet, which is feedback from me on all the great things that you should be doing in order to prepare your profile, whether you want to prepare it for job searching or thought leadership, but all the things that you really need to be considering and implementing. So if you scan that QR code, you can download that cheat sheet. And I'm also doing profile reviews. I'm only doing 50 of them, but I ran a session yesterday for reps, and it was so popular that I agreed that I would do 50 profile reviews for anyone that might want a personalized profile review from me. So there's more information on that QR code as well on how you can do that. So please feel free to do that. Moving on. I want to let you know that the next session for future leaders is all going to be around skills. So we're going to be talking next year really about what are the skills as regulated quality professionals, what are the skills that companies are going to be hiring, and what do you need to start working on now to keep yourself future-proof and employable in a changing world. So that's going to be a really interesting one. We've got a great panel of people lined up that are going to be sharing their insights on what they're seeing as the most employable skills that you should all be developing. So you can scan this QR code as well. So loads of QR codes for everyone. You can scan this one to sign up for the next event. If not, it will be in the email follow-up as well. And finally, as I said, this was episode 13. So there are 12 more episodes of Future Leaders where you can watch them on demand on the Elemed website or on YouTube, wherever you prefer, or listen to them on podcast. There's so much insight in there. So if you're someone that's really wanting to develop your leadership skills, we have had some of the best in the industry really sharing their best thoughts and best practices following years and years of their experiences and mistakes that they have made. So this is a great way to fast track your own learning. So you can find those recordings there. And finally, I'd just love to say thank you all for joining. This has been a really, really good session. I'm so glad that we did the session, on difficult conversations and mastering performance. I want to wish everybody a really fantastic end to the year. And if I don't speak to you all before, I will see you in 2026. That's all. We're the top of the hour. I promised we would finish on time. Thank you and good night.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.